What if the entire narrative of human origin isn't a story of gradual evolution, but one of an abrupt and forgotten arrival? What if our most sacred and ancient myths are not mere fables, but the fractured, fading memories of a long journey across the stars? The quest for this profound truth doesn't begin by gazing at the distant heavens, but by digging into the very dust, bones, and hushed whispers of our own planet. This hidden reality reveals itself in scattered fragments, visible only to those who are truly prepared to see. In the sun-scorched ruins of a desert civilization, under a sky painted in hues of gold and amber, an archaeologist with keen eyes and sun-weathered skin feels a deep, instinctual certainty. He senses that the ancient stones surrounding him are not silent. They murmur the secrets of an alien ancestry, a history far older than the one he was taught. At that very same moment, in a sterile, high-technology laboratory thousands of miles away, a geneticist with a piercing, analytical gaze stares at the glowing projection of a DNA helix. She confronts a tension-filled, paradigm-shattering revelation. The intricate, complex code of humanity might not be of earthly origin at all. This same startling truth flickers to life in the quiet solitude of a candlelit archive. There, an elderly historian, his eyes augmented by an advanced reality visor, watches as ancient star constellations are perfectly overlaid on his sacred manuscripts, suggesting an extraterrestrial truth that clashes violently with our accepted past. This dawning awareness is not confined to Earth. Far from the cradle of humanity, out on the stark, barren landscape of the lunar horizon, an astronaut stands with a clenched jaw, watching the blue and white marble of our planet rise into the blackness. He is overcome by a profound and dizzying sense of both isolation and revelation. It strikes him with the force of a physical blow. Maybe humanity hasn't just discovered a new world in space. Maybe, after all this time, we have finally returned home. This truth is not a secret reserved for scholars and specialists. It echoes in the quiet moments of ordinary people's lives, resonating with a strange familiarity. It can be seen in the wide, intensely curious eyes of a young child, whose irises seem to hold a subtle, inner glow like coated starlight, as if his soul remembers a home beyond the constellations. It manifests as a mix of profound awe and primal dread for a woman standing in a remote jungle clearing, her hands trembling as she touches a monolithic obelisk covered in symbols that are decidedly not of human creation. In a dusty tent near an archaeological excavation, a young linguist, assisted by a sophisticated translator drone, stares in disbelief at her screen. She realizes that the ancient, cryptic runes she has been struggling to decipher form a simple, world-shattering phrase. "We came from the sky." This knowledge has been held sacred and passed down through generations by a shamanic elder who, by the flickering light of a desert fire, recounts an oral history whose very cadence and rhythm encode the epic story of an alien migration. The evidence is etched into our planet's very lineage. In a rocky, subterranean cavern, a paleontologist's hands tremble as a high-resolution digital scan reveals that a fossilized skull she has just unearthed possesses characteristics that defy the established pathways of earthly evolution. This radical possibility forces profound and unsettling questions upon a philosopher in the quiet, book-lined sanctuary of his library. He is left to wonder if humanity's entire existence on this planet is not an origin story, but a long, unexplained exile. The anxiety this creates is deeply personal, felt by a mother and her child sitting on their rustic farmhouse porch as twilight descends, questioning if the bonds of family might just stretch across the unfathomable distances between entire galaxies. The proof is also carved into the surface of the land itself. An explorer, flying high above the arid plains of Peru, looks down upon the colossal, enigmatic Nazca lines and is struck by an overwhelming sense of awe. He can't shake the feeling that he's not looking at art, but at sophisticated landing guides, etched into the earth for our own forgotten ancestors. The search for answers deepens, leading investigators into the realms of code and buried mystery. A brilliant cryptographer, working late in his city apartment, becomes convinced that ancient star myths are not just stories, but a complex cipher mapping safe migration corridors through the cosmos. On a windswept ridge in the Atacama Desert, a field geologist makes a stunning find, a shard of volcanic basalt with microscopic grooves etched into its surface. Analysis reveals it to be an astronomical ephemeris, a set of coordinates burned into rock like an interstellar boarding pass, whispering that our ancestors arrived by following a precise map. Far beneath the waves of the North Atlantic, an oceanographer piloting a deep-sea submersible discovers submerged geometric structures. They look less like temples and more like interstellar ports, as if a highly advanced civilization long ago built grand arrival lounges beneath the ocean. Our ancestors even appear to have left behind a cosmic supply chain. A team of mountaineers, high on a remote glacier, pulls a strange, metallic crate from the ancient ice. Inside are alloys that have been carbon dated to an era where their creation would have been impossible, stamped with a mysterious insignia that perfectly matches petroglyphs found on a continent halfway around the world. This incredible knowledge has been protected through centuries of silence and ceremony. In a secluded Himalayan monastery, a monk's prayer beads emit faint, holographic symbols as he chants, his prayers acting as a living encryption key to a cosmic memory. In the vastness of the desert, a nomad, carrying a staff intricately carved with star patterns, continues an eternal search for the origins he knows are carried in his very blood. The immense sorrow of this lost knowledge is felt most acutely by an archivist in the dim, climate-controlled vault of a great museum. She is overcome with the fear that all of our recorded history may be nothing more than the scattered, misunderstood pages of an alien's diary. But now, a new generation is fighting to bring this monumental truth into the light. A passionate young activist, standing on a crowded city rooftop, speaks with rebellious determination, convinced that humanity's alien truth must be revealed to the world. This hidden memory is honored by an elder woman in a cliffside temple, who gently caresses an ancient stone carving depicting a starship. It is rediscovered by a young boy exploring overgrown ruins, who clutches a shard of obsidian that seems to whisper to him in a strange, alien tongue. This is our forgotten legacy. This truth is that we are the travelers, and Earth is not our origin, but our harbor. If the story of humanity is one of deliberate design, an engineered artifact placed on this world, then its blueprint must exist somewhere. The monumental search for our origins shifted its focus, turning away from the desert sands and ancient, crumbling ruins to explore the most intimate and complex landscapes of all, the human body and the human mind. What was discovered there was not a subtle whisper of our past, but a deafening, biological roar. In the quiet hum of a dim research bunker, a geneticist made a startling breakthrough. She found that the vast stretches of our DNA, long dismissed as junk, were anything but. They formed intricate, repeating patterns that mirrored constellations, suggesting our very cells carry encrypted navigational charts for a home we've never known. This discovery was echoed in a darkened sleep laboratory, where a neuroscientist witnessed a profound convergence among his subjects. Their dreams coalesced around a single, shared, and impossible vision: alien landscapes under the light of twin suns. It was a powerful implication that dreaming is not just fantasy, but a form of cellular memory replay, a nightly broadcast of an origin never lived on Earth. The evidence mounted as a biochemist was left stunned, watching proteins in his lab twist themselves into fractal mandalas that were perfect mirrors of ancient Sumerian symbols, hinting that our biology itself was designed as a sophisticated mnemonic device. A surgeon, standing in the focused intensity of an operating room, observed a patient's cardiac rhythms forming distinct, repeating digital sequences, sparking the unbelievable thought that our organs may be organic transmitters, perpetually broadcasting faint reminders of where we came from. This torrent of discovery began to bridge the long-standing chasm between faith and science. A monk scholar had a moment of pure epiphany, realizing that the sacred texts he had studied for a lifetime and the genetic codons being mapped by science were describing the exact same fundamental code. He theorized that the prophets and seers of old may not have been receiving divine messages, but instead remembering fragmented pieces of an alien blueprint. This knowledge seems to surface earliest in the untainted minds of the innocent. A child prodigy, in a feverish burst of inspiration, scrawled complex genetic sequences onto a classroom blackboard, which, when analyzed, resolved into a perfect map of the constellation Cygnus, as if her own blood still remembered lullabies sung by forgotten stars. The evidence became absolute and undeniable. Deep in a secure underground biobank, a genetic archivist analyzed a frozen, ancient DNA sample and found that it contained genetic markers completely absent from every known form of earthly life. A brilliant mathematician, during a university lecture, formally proved that the redundant sequences in our genome encode precise astronomical distances. Our DNA is simultaneously a library of our history and a map back to the stars. A virologist even found that certain common viruses carry foreign codons, suggesting they are not our enemies, but are perhaps the remnants of ancient, alien genetic upgrades, designed to rewrite and guide our species' evolution. Finally, a cryptographer broke the ultimate code. By arranging our nucleotide patterns into celestial diagrams, he proved that our DNA is a master cipher, designed to remain locked until our species was mature enough to remember its own identity. A young coder, applying a new algorithm to a public DNA dataset, decrypted a structured binary message hidden within, repeating one simple, staggering phrase: "We are the travelers." One bioinformatician even discovered an encrypted audio file nested within our genome. A haunting, beautiful melody that perfectly matched ancient chants from multiple, unconnected cultures, the soundtrack to our migration across the stars. The final, existential shock came to an astronaut floating in the silence of orbit. He watched as our DNA readouts, broadcast from Earth, synchronized perfectly with the mapped constellations surrounding him, proving that humanity itself is the bridge between flesh and the cosmos, the living roadmap to an origin we are only now beginning to recall. But the blueprint was not only written in our flesh, it was also cast in stone. At the ancient site of Göbekli Tepe, a geoarchaeologist had a revelation. The world's oldest sanctuary was not a temple for worship, but a massive, terrestrial tuning fork aimed at the sky, a calibration bay for the descendants of interstellar travelers. An architect in his modern studio saw that the precise ratios of ancient Indus Valley cities matched the stress maps of atmospheric reentry vehicles, realizing that their urban planning was a form of spacecraft memory, a blueprint for flight translated into stone and brick. On a wind-battered cliff in Norway, a rhenologist finally understood that the ancient runes were not an alphabet, but a sophisticated polar navigation simulator, a cockpit console built from legend to time our eventual return through a charged and waiting sky. This pattern of hidden technology was everywhere. A museum conservator discovered that a clay disc, long thought to be a liturgical object, was in fact a detailed technical checklist for a spacecraft's departure sequence. In a submerged cavern in the Yucatan, a speleologist found what could only be described as a hidden maintenance dock for spacecraft, concealed from the sky when the oceans rose to erase our collective memory. This memory is a living, breathing principle. A survey engineer, flying over the incredible terraces of Sacsayhuaman, realized the famous zigzag walls were not for defense. They were a shockwave diffuser, a living dam against unimaginable forces, a city's backbone built from a forgotten engineer's memory of space travel. A metallurgist in a field lab confirmed that an ancient ingot, worshipped for centuries as a sacred relic, was forged from a non-terrestrial alloy, a spare part for a ship that has been waiting for millennia. The knowledge was safeguarded by faith and art. A manuscript sleuth in a quiet archive found a detailed CAD manual for a ship's hull hidden inside the verses of a religious hymn. A potter in her workshop, her hands moving with an instinct she didn't understand, unconsciously shaped a clay pot whose profile perfectly followed an airframe spline, a muscle memory passed down through countless generations. Finally, a mission planner in a dim, modern command room networked all of these ancient monuments into a single, global schema. A tightening silence fell over the room as the truth became clear. The ziggurats, the pyramids, the geoglyphs, the stone circles, they were not tombs or temples. They were all nodes. Earth is a planetary-scale phased array, a massive instrument, asleep in plain sight, waiting for us to remember how to tune it, so that when it finally broadcasts its signal, the sky will answer, not as a stranger, but as an address finally returning mail to its sender. The blueprint is everywhere, in our blood, in our stone, in the very mathematics of our cities. But this discovery opens a new, more terrifying question. If the evidence of our origin is so overwhelming, why don't we remember? The answer suggests something far more sinister than simple forgetting. It suggests a memory that was deliberately locked away. In a sterile office, a psychologist listens as patient after patient draws the same alien landscapes they have never seen, suggesting that déjà vu is not an illusion, but fragments of an erased memory resurfacing from the collective mind. This memory seems to break through the static of our conditioning. A neuroscientist in a sleep lab finds a repeating brainwave pattern identical to pulsar signals, proving that dreams are not chaos but archived transmissions, echoes of skies we once called home. The evidence points to a chilling conclusion. This memory was deliberately silenced. A historian in a dusty abbey library discovers that the margins of ancient manuscripts describe not prophecy, but erasure, warnings of knowledge forbidden to recall. This amnesia was a scripted event. The most potent proof comes from the mouths of children. A child in a dark village hut whispers the names of constellations no one has taught her, proving that innocence remembers what civilization was trained to forget. This memory is activated through ritual. A shaman elder on a cliffside, through chanting, induces visions of starship corridors, showing that trance is not mysticism, but an activation key for ancestral memory embedded in the blood. And in a futuristic biotech lab, a geneticist makes a shocking discovery. The silent regions of our DNA emit structured frequencies, hinting they are locked vaults of memory, encrypted diaries waiting for the right key to be found. Sometimes, the lock is broken by force. A trauma survivor, in a dim clinic, recounts unbidden visions of star fields and alien cities, suggesting that trauma can fracture the conditioning, leaking memories of an exile the body has never stopped holding. This knowledge was preserved by those who understood the forgetting. A monk in a mountaintop monastery knows his chants are encryption keys, rituals that reopen the archives of memory humanity was forced to forget. Even in the void of space, the past bleeds through. An astronaut, dreaming mid-orbit of a world with twin moons, has memories so vivid they fracture his waking identity, proving that recall is possible, that the homeland was erased from history, but not from the soul. The forgetting was an explicit act. An anthropologist, in a dripping cavern, finds glyphs that describe a forgetting ceremony, a ritual of imposed amnesia to sever humans from their cosmic past. This leaves a permanent scar on the human psyche. A philosopher in a quiet cloister garden describes a sense of homesickness that no place on earth can resolve, suggesting that our longing itself is proof of exile. The mechanism of this suppression is now being uncovered. A neurologist, analyzing brain scans, discovers deliberately blocked neural pathways, memories suppressed by design, suggesting our consciousness was engineered to forget. And an oracle-like elder, in a desert shrine, speaks of this very act, her chants aligning with genetic resonance, triggering visions of ships leaving burning worlds, confirming that the memory of our true origin is not myth, but a suppressed truth preserved in the fragments of ritual. A neuroscientist, in a sterile lab, proves that this amnesia is an engineered architecture within our consciousness, built not by chance, but by design. Monks in cliffside monasteries use chants to modulate brainwaves, confirming that ritual was crafted as an encryption key to the memories of exile hidden within the body. The lock, however, can be broken by trauma, which leaks fragments of the alien memory humanity was conditioned to suppress. Innocence is a key, as a child speaks in an unknown tongue that aligns with alien glyphs, suggesting children carry genetic memory unbroken by conditioning. A geneticist makes a horrifying discovery from the code itself, as hidden DNA sequences declare, "We erased ourselves," confirming humanity's amnesia may be self-inflicted, a defense against a forgotten trauma. A philosopher, in a candlelit cloister, describes visions of star-born cities, concluding that déjà vu and dreams are fractures of a deliberately buried truth. An astronaut, during the violent stress of re-entry, is overwhelmed with visions of departure fleets, proving the edge of death fractures the suppression. This memory can be reclaimed collectively. A shaman elder leads his tribe in a chant that unlocks a shared vision of burning worlds and starships leaving, proving collective ritual can bypass amnesia. A neurologist finds the suppressed neural pathways flaring to life, showing that memory clusters were locked away for millennia. An oracle's prophecy of the forgetting echoes genetic code phrases later confirmed in a lab, bridging mysticism and science. A historian finds scrolls describing ceremonies to suppress collective memory, proving civilizations participated in sealing away their own cosmic origins. A scientist in an underground lab finds that encrypted DNA strands reveal coordinates to the stars, a map meant to awaken only when science was advanced enough to read it. A mother's lullaby, passed down through generations, contains alien phrases preserved in melody, proof that memory survives most strongly in love and song. An archaeologist finds an inscription in a cavern that warns, "To remember is to awaken," confirming amnesia was a deliberate sentence, a prison of forgetfulness. A dream researcher finds that subjects across cultures describe the same alien landscapes, proof that the subconscious mind remembers what the waking mind cannot. A mystic's vision reveals that humanity once chose to forget, sealing the truth away so that their descendants would not have to bear an unbearable memory. An astronaut confirms that memory suppression was written not just in the mind, but in biology itself, synchronized with pulsars to ensure we would forget until the time was right. An elder storyteller's tale mirrors laboratory discoveries word for word, proving oral tradition preserved the truth of exile disguised as myth. A philosopher concludes with dread that humanity was condemned to forget by its own ancestors, punished by memory erasure in order to survive in ignorance. Finally, a genetic archivist in a deep cryovault finds the ultimate proof, an embedded star map in an ancient DNA sample, confirming that our cosmic amnesia was designed not to destroy us, but to delay us until the appointed time to remember had finally come. The amnesia was not a flaw. It was a feature, a lock designed to delay us until an appointed time. But the time for forgetting is over. All over the world, in labs and rituals, in breath and in rhythm, the keys are turning. A cognitive ethnographer, in a sterile recall chamber, discovers that ancient prayer cadences are the key, that breath and tempo can unlock the forgetting signature that has kept our memories dormant for millennia. In a fog-soft delta, a field linguist realizes that a mother's lullaby is not for sedation, but for indexing, a librarian's trick that files memories behind the veil of dreams where sensors cannot reach. The lock is not just chemical, it is musical. A biophysicist, in a vibration-isolated room, finds that when exposed to subsonic tones used in ancient chants, the DNA helix loosens like an unclenching hand, revealing transient, visual memories of starship corridors and cities we never built on Earth. This knowledge was preserved by those who enforced the silence. In a monastic scriptorium, an archivist's sister finds the decree from centuries ago, the pact to seal the sky story. Find in song, hide the key in mothers. Not an accident, but a policy of love and survival, a time capsule praying to be forgiven for keeping children safe by teaching them to forget the road home. Our bodies themselves are the living record. A vestibular physiologist finds that our sense of balance is biased toward lower gravities, that our muscles still rehearse a choreography banned from memory. The triggers are everywhere because the world we built accidentally echoes the world we left. A psychiatrist, treating a veteran for trauma, realizes that his patient's flashbacks of fleeing a city of glass under two pale moons are not hallucinations, but echoes of a real, forgotten event. Even our celebrations were a form of code. A cultural cryptanalyst, in a museum backroom, discovers that carnival drum patterns across continents are phase-shifted mnemonics for unlocking group brain states. A warehouse of wrenches labeled joy, meant to pry open the vault of the human mind. An astroarchivist finds that the timings of distant pulsars rhyme with the cadence of a grandmother's lullaby, and that these warden tones that lulled us to sleep can now be reversed to awaken the corridors of our past. An ancient obsidian mirror, once used for prophecy, is revealed to be a phase plate that, when sung to, blooms starways that are no longer visible to the naked eye. On a salt flat, a bioacoustician finds that the wind itself stacks into chords used in pilgrimage chants, a resonant plate calling exiles by their true name. The final key is in our own blood. A genetic archivist, in a cryovault, coaxes a micro-hologram from within the helix, a 3-beat glyph with coordinates embedded in its strokes, a seed that unpacks into a map only when sung to in the pitch of the mothers who carried it. This is no longer theoretical. On a city rooftop, a ritual historian watches as activists drumming on steel barrels translate their beats into nucleotide motifs. The lock clicks open in multiple skulls at once, and memory returns not to a few, but rises like the weather. A neuroscientist, in a research chamber, watches in reverence as a subject's suppressed neural pathways flare alive when exposed to ancient chant frequencies, proving that humanity's amnesia was engineered into the very architecture of the mind, hidden but never destroyed. An archaeologist on a wind-lashed plateau deciphers a megalith's true warning, the binding of remembrance, a warning that amnesia was not a punishment, but a form of protection. A philosopher concludes with dread that forgetting was both a cage and a mercy, a sentence imposed to spare humanity the madness of remembering too much. Yet, the memory persists in the young. A child in a quiet meadow hums a forgotten lullaby whose phrases align perfectly with DNA encryption patterns, leaking truth across generations. A mystic elder triggers a shared vision among his followers, starships and burning worlds flooding their sight, confirming that collective memory can be restored through ritual harmony. An astronaut, in the silence of orbit, confirms that this lock is written in both flesh and sky, synchronized with distant pulsars to ensure we would forget until the time demanded remembrance. A storyteller by a desert fire recounts a tale of chains of silence forged in stars, revealing myths as survival codes, instructions left to ensure the forgetting endured until descendants were strong enough to break them. In a cryovault, a genetic archivist finds the final, crushing proof, embedded visual records of the departure, families boarding ships, whispering vows never to return until they were ready, proving amnesia was not a curse, but a covenant. And with that, the great forgetting ends. The story is no longer about a lost past, but a reclaimed future. An astronaut philosopher, floating in the void, sees that our very blood is both archive and roadmap, undeniable proof that we are travelers who forgot the journey. On a desert plateau, an anthropologist translates a simple, stunning declaration from a stone slab. We are the seeders, not the sown. A geneticist finds the words written in our genome itself. We carried fire across skies. An elder, in a sacred trance, cries out the truth for all to hear. We are the returners. A pilot, flying over the Nazca lines, realizes with crushing awe that the geoglyphs are runways, not for gods, but for us. A child in a rural meadow whispers a phrase in an unknown tongue, later decoded as, "We are the travelers." A historian in a candlelit library looks up from an ancient codex, his voice trembling. The gods were us. We came from the stars. And on a city rooftop, an activist projects the message for all to see, as the crowd roars in defiance and reclamation. We are not from here. The truth, finally, is sung in a mother's lullaby, proof that it survives most strongly in love, passed through melody where empires failed to erase it. With the amnesia broken and the truth revealed, humanity was reborn. The story was no longer about a forgotten past, but an active, unfolding future. The final pieces of the puzzle were not discovered in quiet labs, but confirmed in the heart of our most sacred and ancient sites. In a manuscript archive, a sleuth found erased lines in a hymn that, when revealed, formed a CAD manual for a ship's hull, proving faith had been safeguarding field notes for centuries. A potter, in her smoky workshop, unconsciously shaped a vessel whose profile followed an airframe spline, her hands repeating an engineer's memory across millennia. An astronomer at Heliopolis realized the entire city was an analog orrery, an instrument to tune citizens to the cosmos, encoding science as civic ritual. A harpist historian found that when an ancient hymn was played, The walls of a stone chamber bloomed with a hidden star chart, proving that the safest vault is a song. The engineer of Angkor Thom realized the city's canals were not for defense, but for data, a riverine computer disguised as an empire. A lapidary discovered that the grooves on an ancient bead encoded a unit of measure matching monument baselines across the globe, metrology worn as jewelry, safe from conquest. The blueprint was everywhere. An archivist monk found thermal engineering disguised as a saintly fresco, pedagogy woven into devotion. A desert ranger saw that the pyramids of Meroe were not tombs, but seismic baffles, crowns that hid calculus in plain sight. And finally, a mission planner in a repurposed museum, watching the global monument network light up on a holomap, understood the final truth. Earth itself is a phased array, a planet-sized instrument asleep in plain sight. Her voice, barely a thread, confirmed it. It's not proof of visit. It's proof of ourselves. The old grid could be awakened. The sky would answer, not as a stranger, but as mail returning to its sender. The decision was made. The children of Earth would reclaim their heritage as travelers of the cosmos. An astronaut, looking down on the glowing planet, whispered the confession that became an anthem. We are not from here, only bound here by chains of memory erased. A neuroscientist in a sterile lab proved that this amnesia was an engineered architecture, a lock built by design. A monk on a cliffside showed that the lock could be opened by ritual, that faith was a doorway to the memories of exile. The memory leaked through trauma, was whispered by children, and was finally decoded in our genes. We erased ourselves. A message confirming our amnesia was a self-inflicted act of survival. A philosopher saw the truth in our shared, unspoken dreams. An astronaut, at the edge of death during re-entry, felt the lock break as visions of departure fleets overwhelmed him. A shaman elder, in the desert, led his tribe in a chant that unlocked a shared vision of burning worlds and starships leaving, a memory restored to the community. A neurologist found the suppressed neural pathways, memory clusters locked away for millennia, proving our past lies just beyond the reach of the waking mind. An oracle's prophecy of the forgetting was confirmed by genetic code, bridging mysticism and science into a single, concealed truth. Historians found the records of the ceremonies used to suppress memory, while scientists found the star maps hidden within our DNA, a map designed to reawaken when we were ready. The memory survived in a mother's lullaby, and in an archaeologist's warning from the deep past. To remember is to awaken. It persisted in the shared dreams of cultures across the globe, and in the mystic's vision of ships leaving Earth, suggesting we chose to forget to spare ourselves an unbearable memory. The lock was written in our biology, synchronized to the stars themselves, ensuring we would forget until the time was right. It was preserved in the storyteller's myth, and contemplated by the philosopher who realized humanity was condemned to forget by its own ancestors. The final key was found in a frozen vial, a genetic archive confirming that our amnesia was not meant to destroy us, but to delay us until the appointed time. Now, the time has come. On a city rooftop, an astronaut declares the ultimate truth. We are the aliens we've been searching for. In a quiet cloister, a philosopher writes the final entry in his journal. We searched for gods and strangers, but the answer is ourselves. We are the aliens we feared and worshipped. In a biolab, a geneticist confirms our DNA was designed as a testament. Children of exile, proving Earth was never our cradle, but our refuge. A child whispers the truth in a language we are just now relearning. We are the return. An ancient tablet is finally understood. We left so that we may return. On a city rooftop, a crowd roars, not in fear, but in reclamation of their identity as the seated. A mother's lullaby becomes the anthem of a species remembering its cosmic heritage. A scientist in an underground lab watches as his algorithm reveals the binary message coded into all genomes. We are not from here. An astronaut, looking down upon the Earth, feels an overwhelming sense of recognition. Space is not the destination, it is home. And on a coastal cliff, a chorus of human voices, scientists, children, elders, explorers, rises together into the night, no longer a question or a confession, but an anthem of homecoming. We are the aliens.